I've heard Nobel laureates say that, they are not experts in research. They may be experts in one particular aspect of research, but not in research in its entirety. So that is how we should look at things. This webinar will be a guiding light. This webinar is not the last thing that you would be doing in terms of learning about research. Obviously, there is a lot more beyond this webinar, but we'll try to, sum up things in this activity. So in this presentation, the outcomes at the end of this webinar, I would want that my audience knows what research is and what does not constitute research. And then, you would know what are the major types of research, why should you be doing research, and how to go about doing research. And then one of the key steps in research is to access research papers. So we'll talk about how we can get hold of research papers. And then obviously the ultimate outcome of research is writing a research paper. So we will also talk about how we can write one research paper. So we will cover the basics of research. 3 sections. First section, basics. The second is accessing research papers. The third is writing a research paper. And in between, we will have a gaming session. And in fact, there are 2 gaming sessions that we have planned. There are no prizes. So don't, keep your hopes very high. And then we'll have a take-home message and some question and answers if there are any. So moving on now, what is research? Now, we know research, generally speaking, we would say that, why things happen, what is making them happen, where do they happen, how do they happen, that is research, explaining things, finding the means and insights into things, that is research. Okay, so there are so many definitions of research. And simply speaking, as I put it, research is a structured approach to obtain and confirm new and reliable knowledge. So when I say it is a structured approach, it means that it is a systematic approach. It is a step-by-step approach. You cannot jump from one step to the middle step or to the last step. You have to go one at a time. You have to take everything one at a time and move in a very orderly manner. The purpose of research is to obtain and confirm new and reliable knowledge. So new, novelty, originality, uniqueness, and reliability, both are important components of the definition of research. Another way in which we can, talk about research is that it is a process of systematic inquiry that entails collection of data, documentation of critical information, and then analysis and interpretation of that data and information. Now, this definition, in my opinion, it is incomplete, because this is saying that collection of data, documentation of information, and then analysis and interpretation. This is the execution part of research. Research, if I tell you, it has 2 parts, and both parts are equally important, if not, if one is not better than the other, equally important at least. The part that you begin with is the planning part. Planning part is where you are thinking about your research, thinking about the research ideas, thinking about formulating your research questions, your hypotheses, your methodology. And then comes the execution part, which is collection of knowledge. So with that knowledge that is being added, we add it by either publishing the data, by presenting our findings, by attending conferences. So we have to share the findings of research. That is also an important part of research. And then one of the very important aspects of research is that it does not always give you answers. It gives you questions. It gives you new questions. And based on those new questions, you can develop new research projects. So that is how research works. This is the beauty of science. This is the beauty of research, that, one thing leads to another. Now, you would have noticed one thing in research, in the definition that we have discussed, that there is no mention of the word truth. We have talked about new knowledge, we have talked about reliable knowledge, but we have not talked about true knowledge, because research is not necessarily always leading to things which are true. So the point is that, I can give you an example of the COVID-19 pandemic. When the pandemic came, there was a lot of hit and trial being going on. There were new, medicines being developed. There were old medicines being used for COVID-19. One of those medicines which was used was ivermectin. Now, there was a lot, initially it was, on cell cultures, it was found that ivermectin can, stop the replication of this COVID virus. And this was replicated in some small studies. But when randomized controlled trials were done, it was found that ivermectin has no significant improvement as compared to placebo in treating COVID-19. So research not necessarily always leads to true answers. Yes, but science has this auto-corrective nature. If you make a mistake, if there is a wrong finding out of one research, next research with a better design can always correct that. So that is how research is done. What research is not? It is not accidental discovery. You are doing a research process and then you have a strange observation, a unique phenomena that you see during that research process. That is an accidental discovery, but that is not research. Yes, that accidental discovery can lead to development of a new research project to evaluate whether that discovery, that observation, or that phenomena is true or not, whether it is reliable or not, whether it is valid or not. So I can give you one example of an accidental discovery from history. Now, Alexander Fleming, he was working on bacteria. He was growing Staphylococcus bacteria in a petri dish. And he went on holidays. And when he came back to his lab, he saw that there was this green mold growing in the petri dish of Staphylococcus colony. Now he noticed that wherever that green mold was growing, the bacterial colony around that area, it was less dense as compared to the bacterial colony that was away from the green mold. So he immediately thought that, there must be some substance produced by that green mold that was stopping the growth of bacteria. And since that green mold was penicillium, he started calling that substance, which was till that time not known, he started calling it penicillin. That was an accidental discovery. That was not research. That discovery led to a research process, which led to ultimately purification of penicillin, clinical trials, and finally penicillin being approved as an antibiotic. It took 20 years from that accidental discovery to actually, availability of penicillin in the market. That is accidental discovery leading to research. Another recent example of that is discovery of aquaporins by Dr. Peter Agre. Peter Agre got the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2003 for the discovery of aquaporins. So, aquaporins, they are the universal water channels. And till 1992, we did not know how the movement of water takes place in tissues. And it was Peter Agre, just by sheer luck, he stumbled upon this protein while working on an Rh protein in red blood cells. And, then they did more research and found out that it was actually aquaporins. So I'm emphasizing accidental discovery is not research. Yes, it can lead to a research process, which can give rise to final outcomes. Then data collection. As students, we think that, collecting data is doing research. Yes, it is a very important part of research, but it is not research. Without data collection, you cannot do research, but data collection solely does not constitute research. Similarly, literature search. People think that, they're sitting on their computers and searching the internet, downloading articles, and this is research. They're doing research. They're doing a part of research, a very important part of research, yes, but it is not research. So research is a systematic, stepwise process, does not constitute individual steps, but when taken together, that is what makes it research. One term that you should know is empirical research. Now, empirical research is basically that research which derives its outcomes based on concrete evidence that can be verified. So there is observation, there is measurement, there is, estimation of things. And based on those estimates, those measurements and observations, you come to certain conclusions. Rather than your own beliefs, rather than a theory, it is actually concrete evidence that you are working with. So most of the research that we do in biomedical sciences, in life sciences, it is empirical research. How do we differentiate an empirical research from any other research? So empirical research, there will be a research question. How does COVID spread? That is an empirical research. There will be a study population. Well, age group, then there are genders, males or females, diabetics, non-diabetics, hypertensive, everything is defined. And then there will be a description of the study process. What is the inclusion criteria? What is the exclusion criteria? What group will serve as the control group? What tests will be done? PCR will be done. Blood tests will be done. Serum, C-reactive protein will be done. Questionnaires will be administered. So all these things, if they are there in a research, that makes it an empirical research, because the data that you are generating, it is concrete, verifiable evidence. Now, one more thing which is important about research is that all well-conducted, well-designed research, it has potential applications. No research which is good is without applications. It will have some utility. Otherwise, there is no point of doing research if it is not got any application. So sometimes, you come across research papers in which you cannot identify any application. The reason is that maybe you are not trained well enough to pick those applications. You are not well trained with the methodology that has been adopted in that research. Or second thing is that maybe the researchers themselves, they have not highlighted that application appropriately. So it is the duty of the researchers that when they are writing up a research project and they're writing up the paper, they have to highlight the applications and they have to highlight what are the means and techniques that will be needed to elicit those applications of that particular research. Another differentiation in research is basic against applied research. So basic research is determining or establishing fundamental facts and their relationships, or to develop theories. For example, Newton's laws of motion. Every action has an equal but opposite reaction. This is basic research. It has utility, but the utility is still not known. The application is still not, it is not clear. The applied research, on the other hand, it provides practical solutions to specific problems. So the problem was that, man has to go to the moon. Now, based on the Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal but opposite reaction. We developed a rocket, and rocket is the solution to taking man to moon. So that is the difference between basic against applied research. Another example that I can give is that of the COVID vaccine, a recent example. Now, first, basic research was done. What is the structure of the COVID virus? What family does it belong to? Is it an RNA virus? Yes, we know it is an RNA virus belonging to the coronavirus family, and it has spike proteins. This is all basic research. And the applied aspect is that based on the knowledge that spike protein increases the virulence of this coronavirus, so we developed a messenger RNA vaccine and we introduce it into the host. It develops spike proteins and which generates an immune response that is protective. So that is the applied aspect. So basic research leads to applied research. That is also a key take-home message for today's webinar. Then there is qualitative research and quantitative research. Qualitative research is that I take 10 people and I ask them, how are you? Some of those people, they will say we are fine. Others will say we are not good. Some of them will just make an ugly face, suggesting they are not fine. And some will say, maybe just making a sound. So these things, words, images, sounds, they are part of the qualitative data that we gather. So basic is that we are giving a detailed description of the phenomena that we are studying. That is qualitative research. And on the other end of the spectrum is quantitative research. It is numerical data. We're talking in terms of numbers. We're talking in terms of frequencies, percentages, means, and averages. We're using statistical methods. We are comparing these numbers. And ultimately, this provides us objective data. Objective data, empirical data, concrete data, verifiable data. And generally speaking, in biomedical sciences, more than 90% of the research that we are doing, It is quantitative research because we are talking in terms of numbers. This many patients got treated, this many patients died, this many patients did not respond to the treatment. That is all quantitative research. Then there is observational and experimental research. Observation research, also called non-experimental research. You are just observing a person, an animal, a phenomenon, not doing any intervention, not doing any manipulation. Example, you take two groups. One group is smokers, the other is non-smokers. And in the end, after, let us say, 10 years, you see that the incidence of lung cancer is higher in smokers as compared to non-smokers. You have not done any intervention, you have just observed. And you can say that there is a relationship between smoking and lung cancer. But you cannot definitely say that smoking leads to lung cancer. The causality cannot be established. The cause and effect relationship, it cannot be established. In experimental research, I will give you an example again, that you take two groups, both smokers, and you do an intervention. One group quits smoking, the other group carries on smoking. And after 5 years, you see the incidence of, lung cancer is higher in people who smoke and less in people who quit smoking. So now you can say definitely that smoking causes lung cancer. So you are establishing the cause and effect relationship. This is experimental study or interventional study. Then there are many different study designs. I don't want to go into details of these study designs at the moment, but these are important to know. When you go about your research, it is important that you choose the right study design to address the research question of your study. Because if you choose an inappropriate study design, you will never be able to get the right answers to your research question. The answers will be misleading. So it is always very important that the choice of research design should be discussed and finalized at the start of the research, not during the research. Now, this is an important question for starters. Why should we do research? We are already busy studying our medical courses, studying our dentistry courses, or whatever you are doing. As undergraduates, there is a lot of pressure. But why do research? And there are reasons that you should be doing research. One is curiosity. Man has this internal inbuilt curiosity. The quest for knowledge is there. So just out of curiosity, you can do research. Then you have an idea, you have an intuition, you want to test that. So in order to validate that, you need to do research. Advancing knowledge is another very important fundamental aspect of doing research. So, finding solutions to problems, day-to-day problems, then, getting evidence, empirical evidence to make decisions based on those evidence. COVID-19, when it came, we didn't know anything. But then we started getting data that, it spreads by aerosol transmission. So masking up was an informed decision based on research. Then innovation, obviously, all the innovation that we see is because of research. Build credibility. When you are publishing good quality research, you are actually increasing your credibility. People will trust your word. You will learn new knowledge and skills. You're doing your degrees, you're doing your MPhils, your PhDs, your BScs. For those degrees, you don't need to do research. Then it is a demand of the job. If you want to carry on with the job, you have to publish. You have to increase the publications. It is called publish or perish. Then you can improve your CV. You will be applying to places. If you have a strong CV with a publication track record, obviously you will be in a better position as compared to others who don't have that good a publication record. Career progression, for doctors, PMDC says that assistant professor has to have, 2 research papers, associate professor has to have 9 research papers, and for professor, you need 15 research papers at least. So you have to publish to progress in your career. Then research allows you to make networks, to collaborate with people with diverse backgrounds. And it is a wonderful thing of research, particularly multidisciplinary research. So you can make links, not only around your institution or in your country, but you can make links internationally as well. Then you can win grants based on your research, you can win prizes. And if you are really good and lucky, you can go on to win the Nobel Prize. Okay, so this is the last part of this first section, how to do research. Again, this is very extensive. And I think just summing it up in one slide will not be doing justice to it. But I think I have split it into steps that you should be following when you are setting on this journey of research. So the first step is that you choose a research topic. When students come to me, they ask me, sir, give us a research topic. Now, if I was to give you a research topic, then it would not be a research, honestly speaking, because for a researcher to begin, you have to identify your own topic. And how do you do that? You do that based on your interest, based on some experience. Maybe a person, God forbid, in the family has a disease that you want to explore about. So you can start working on that disease. You can, start finding a topic within that domain. And then, reading is very important. You have to read research papers. You will find papers that are interesting. Those interesting papers may be the stepping stone for you to begin your own research project. So for that reading, you need to evaluate literature. That is the step 2. Now, step 1 and step 2, they go hand in hand. You choose a topic, you read. You read, you choose a topic. This is how it goes. And finally, you will come to identify a problem that you can address through a research project. Once you have identified that problem, then you move to the third step. That is formulating a research question. Your research question could be, does masking up protect against COVID infection? And based on that research question, you can construct a hypothesis that people who mask are protected from infection by COVID virus. So that is construction of hypothesis. Then you can move on to the step 4, which is designing the research, choosing the research design, observational, experimental, cross-sectional, cohort, randomized controlled trial. Research design is very important. And step 5 is describing the study population. What will be the age group? What sort of patients you want? You want males or females? You want only males? You want children? You want a specific disease? Defining that study population. What numbers will you need? The sample size. That is all part of the 5th step. And then comes the 6th step, which is defining the methods and the tools. For example, for COVID assessment, are you going to assess it with a blood test? Are you going to assess it with a nasal swab test for PCR? So those are the methods and tools. Now here, one thing I want to, clarify to you is there is a difference between methodology and methods. Methodology is from step 3 all the way to the step 6. Everything that you do from the research question down to defining the methods and tools, that is methodology. Whereas methods are the specific methods, the specific tools. The question is that you will be using. The blood test, maybe a lipid profile test that you are doing, a blood glucose test that you are doing, the details of that is methods. So do not confuse the two. Usually methodology is in the early part of research when you are, designing your project. And methods are what it is part of the methodology, but this is actually what you do to come to the research questions answers. Step 7 is collection of data. Step 8, analysis of the data. Analysis is through statistical methods. And again, in step 6, you have to define your statistical tests as well, so that those statistical tests then can be used in step number 8. And the step 9 is interpretation of the data and drawing conclusions. Once you have interpreted the data, then comes the role of dissemination. Dissemination is that you spread the findings, and spreading the findings is in the form of research papers, poster presentations, conference presentations, and nowadays social media is also used for disseminating the findings of your research projects. Okay, ethical research. Yes, this is again very important. If you are doing a very good research project, but it is not ethically correct, then that good research project is a zero research project, because it will not be accepted anywhere. Just to give you a brief background on why ethics have come into play in research, there was this study called the syphilis study. It was done in a small town in the US state of Alabama, Tuskegee. where only Black families lived. And there was this research done to study syphilis, the natural course of the disease syphilis. It carried on for 30 years. The people, they did not know that they were participating in a research. The treatment became available during the course of the research, but they were not given treatment because the scientists who were doing this research, they wanted to see what is the natural course of syphilis. But finally, the scandal broke out, and it led to a lot of hue and cry in the US news and media. And finally, ethical principles were devised. Similarly, in the Second World War, a lot of war crimes were done. And some of the German doctors, they engaged in experiments which were inhuman experiments, barbaric experiments. And finally, when the World War came to an end, then in, I believe, 1951, there were the Nuremberg trials which were held. And 23 of these doctors, they were charged for, inhuman experimentation and given sentences of various kinds. So based on these scandals, in 1964, doctors came together, the World Medical Association, and they recommended certain principles, which are now known as the Declaration of Helsinki. So the basic statement of this Declaration of Helsinki is that during biomedical research, we have to protect the life, health, dignity, integrity, and the right to self-determination, privacy, and confidentiality of the personal information of research subjects. So over the period of time, in 1964, now it's 2023, we have added more ethical principles to doing research. And now we call it good clinical practice or good research practice. So some of the ethical principles, such as informed consent, you have to tell the person that, what the research will entail, and they have to give a voluntary, participation. They have to give a consent. Then their privacy, confidentiality, harm should be minimized. They should be given benefit. It should be fair, unbiased. It should be honest. And then there are others like, transparency, accountability. So these are all the things that you need to do. And this is taken care of when you apply for approval from the ethics committee. The ethics committee looks at all these aspects of a research project. And once they are satisfied, only then they give approval. Right. So far, summing up what we have done, we have talked about what research is, what it is not. We have talked about the different major types of research, and we have talked about the major ethical principles of doing good quality research. Now, I think it's time for a small quiz, and I would ask Mir and Ismail to please begin this game.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a comprehensive session. We will be starting with our game now. So कुछ rules है इस game के, वो ये है कि सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको screen share कर देता हूँ. तो rules कुछ इस तरह के हैं कि अगर आप लोगों के पास 2 devices हैं ना, तो it will be much better, क्योंकि एक से आप मेरी screen देख रहे होंगे और दूसरी से आप मतलब अपने आंसर कर रहे होंगे. स्क्रीन का मतलब ये कि आप एक अपने जो अभी डिवाइस आप कनेक्टेड है उससे आप अपना स्क्रीन मेरी देख रहे होंगे, दूसरी डिवाइस आप आंसर कर रहे होंगे फोन. तो आपने करना क्या है कि हम एक वेबसाइट है kahoot.it, आप इसमें आ जाएं. सबसे पहले तो अपने कोई डिवाइसेस ऑन कर लें ब्राउज़र में और इसमें kahoot.it में आ जाएं. अच्छा, अभी आप जिसमें आए होंगे ना kahoot.it, उसमें ना एक पिन की ऑप्शन आ रही होगी कि एंटर पिन. तो उसमें ना आप ये पिन डाल दें जो आपकी स्क्रीन के सामने आ रही हैं. और तकरीबन 40 प्लेयर्स हमारे ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं इस वक्त. सो आई विल वेट अ कपल ऑफ मिनट्स. तो जैसा आप सब ज्वाइन कर लेते हैं, वी विल बी स्टार्टिंग विद द गेम. और आप अपना एवेटार्स को चेंज भी कर सकते हैं वैसे इसमें, मैंने ये चेक किया था कल. सो देयर विल बी एमसीक्यूज इन दिस गेम. तो जैसे एमसीक्यूज आंसर नहीं करता, आई होप कि सॉक्रेटिव आप लोगों ने यूज़ की होगी और पता होगा, क्योंकि जब हम फर्स्ट डे सेकेंड ईयर में थे ना, तो हिस्टोलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट को सॉक्रेटिव में बड़े क्विज़ेस करवाता था. तो उस किस्म की चीज़ें, मगर ये ज़रा से ज़्यादा ना इंटरेक्टिव टाइप की चीज़ है ये. तो चलो हमारे पास 30 लोग आ गए हैं अभी. सो वी विल बी स्टार्टिंग विद द गेम. अच्छा, सो आई विल बी स्टार्टिंग विद द गेम. और इसमें ना आपको हर क्वेश्चन के लिए 20 सेकंड दिए जाएंगे. तो 20 सेकंड्स आपने आंसर करनी है. अच्छा, तो फिर भी हमारी गेम भी खत्म हो गई है, तो अभी हम आपको लीडर बोर्ड दिखाएंगे अभी। Yeah, so congratulations to Mishi, Aman और Ali, आप लोग applications ले लिए। चलो, तो ये हमारी छोटी सी गेम थी, एक और हमारी होगी अभी, तो अभी हम उसको बंद कर देते हैं अभी के लिए।
All right, so very nicely played, everyone. And I think these three winners did exceptionally well. Ismail, well conducted. You were a very good game show host. You know, you should
Thank you.
think of this career as being a game show host as well. Okay, so now moving on to more serious talk. Now we are going to talk about how to access research papers. Now, accessing research papers, it is an integral part of research. Once you have an idea, from that idea to developing your research question, there is a lot of distance between these two things. And that distance is bridged by literature survey, by reviewing the literature that has already been published. So no research is standing on its own. It is always building on research which has been done in the past. As Newton said that, I have seen farther because I stood on the shoulders of giants. So research drives research. Past research tells you about the gaps that are there in research. And it also gives you the opportunities for doing new research. It is a critical preparatory step that you go through the past research. And this preparatory step is sometimes, commonly referred to as literature survey, but it is also called literature search or literature review as well. So as I said, this is a preparatory step, initial step in preparing to carry out a research project, to know the gaps and the opportunities. But this step does not end in the beginning. Once you have developed a research project, it does not mean that your literature survey is going to stop. It carries on while you are doing your research, and it carries on when you are doing your writing up for the paper. So you can always look up a scientific method. If you are not doing during the experiment, your scientific method is not working, you can again go back to past research and find out information on how to correct that scientific method. You can find out the statistical analysis that has been done previously and apply it on your own research. And then, for writing a discussion of your paper, you need past research and their results for making the comparisons, for contrasting as well. So in short, literature survey, it begins right at the start of the research project, and it goes along all the way, spanning the entire length of the research process. So that is the importance of literature survey. And one big question that people who are starting out on research, they have is that, how to access published research papers. Now, there are many different ways in which research papers can be accessed. You can use academic databases such as Google Scholar. You can, talk to your librarian at your college, at your institution or university, and they will tell you about the resources that their library has. They have authentication details sometimes. They give you, login credentials to log into digital databases as well. Then you should also know that some papers you may not be able to get right away. You may have to pay. And then, if there are authentication details given by the librarian, you can use them, and you can use them to access things that would otherwise be inaccessible to a person. And last thing is that you cannot ignore any paper. If a paper is behind a paywall is that you have to pay to get to get access to a paper. So if you strike a paywall, does not mean that you should ignore that paper. If you think that this paper is important and you need to get full text of this, then either you pay if you are very rich, but unfortunately we are not that rich these days. The payments are really, really expensive. So you have to find out other ways. And we will talk about the other ways of how to, circumvent or going around the paywalls. But before we talk about that, we talk about databases. Now, one of the most commonly used, most popular database is Google Scholar. The advantage of Google Scholar is that there is a wide range of journals, wide range of publications that are listed or indexed on this database. The disadvantage is that not all the data that is there, it is scientific. It may be, general health articles. It may be, short communications, correspondence. So not necessarily research papers or systematic reviews, but anything that is published in the fields not related to health, not related to biomedicine, anything else, it is there. So it is simple. Just like Google, you can type in your keywords and it is powerful, but it is not very reliable. To add reliability, most of the people in biomedical sciences, their first resource for researching or accessing data, papers is PubMed. PubMed indexes high quality journals in health and life sciences. It is a subsidiary of the National Institute of Health and the National Library of Medicine in the USA. It is the first line resource for medical researchers. And you can be assured that whatever papers you're getting from PubMed, most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them are very reliable papers because they have come after scrutiny. Then there is Lens. It is not that commonly used, but it is a very comprehensive database. It started off as a database for intellectual property rights and patents, but now they have started including research, which has led to those patents. It is very comprehensive. And again, it is not limited to health sciences. So that is one problem with Lens, that it gives you everything. Dimensions is a new addition. It's a scholarly search database. Advantage of Dimensions is that in terms of, when we talk about PubMed, Google Scholar, it talks about impact factor and site scores and things like that. Dimension talks about those things, but Dimension also talks about the impact on social media. So you can, get to know whether a particular paper has had any impact in terms of, its social media reach. And that metric is called alt metric. So Dimensions allows you alt metric. Secondly, Dimensions is not only research papers. It is research proposals. It is clinical trials, which are still ongoing. It is research grants, which have been submitted. So you can get your research ideas from Dimensions. Obviously, the research proposals that are listed there, the research grant proposals that are listed there, they are copyrighted. You cannot just steal them, but you can get ideas from those things. So it gives you cutting edge, state-of-the-art information on what is being done in research at this current point of time. So that is the advantage of Dimensions, and it is free for personal use. Then there are paid subscribed databases like Web of Science and Scopus. Institutions sometimes have access to Web of Science and Scopus, but if your institution does not have access, then I believe using the ones which I have told you, other than Scopus and Web of Science, the free ones, I think that is also good enough. But this list is not exhaustive. There is a lot more, but I am restricting myself since this is just a beginning and initial talk. So Google Scholar, you have all seen, search bar, type in the keywords, get your results. Similarly, PubMed, type in the keywords, get your results. There are filters. You can filter by date, filter by review articles, filter by full text, filter by systematic reviews. Particularly, PubMed has advanced filters. So you can use PubMed and filter out the desired articles that you need. One very important feature and very useful feature that I want to introduce to you, that is create alert and create RSS. Now, Google Scholar has a tab called create alert. In this, you just have to type in your email address, and Google Scholar will, anytime with the keywords that you have listed, anytime there is a new entry into the database, you will get an email. You will be prompted that there is a new entry on the database. So you can keep up to date with your search. PubMed has an additional feature. It has create alert, but it also has create RSS feature. Now, this RSS feature is what I like more. Create alert clutters my email inbox. RSS is special. In RSS, it gives you a link. It generates a link. You can bookmark that link and keep it safe in your browser. Every time you click on that link, it will give you the updated, the to the point, the right, in the moment kind of results from those keywords. So you can create an RSS and maybe you reach that or use that RSS after 1 month or 1 week, you will get the updated results on your keywords. So please use these features for accessing research papers. Create alert and create RSS. Now, another thing is that, students sometimes they are lost because there are thousands and thousands of research papers that come out when you are searching for a particular keyword. So you start with a review article, a recent review article, an article which has been published perhaps in the last 1 or 2 years. What it does, it saves you a lot of time. It summarizes the current state of science. It provides you with the important references that you can use for your research project. And also reviews at the end, you will always find that they talk about what is lacking, what evidence is lacking. And they will also point out the new research directions as well. So you can identify the research gaps from reading these review articles, and then you can identify the possible research options that you can also pick up and employ for your research project. So review articles are a very important starting point for a research proposal. Now, we have to get full text. That is important. Reading abstract is good. You get an idea. But if you want to use a paper, if you want to cite a paper, then you have to have the full text, because from the full text, you can get a complete picture of what is in that paper. So some of the papers are open access. That is, you don't have to pay. You don't have to sign in. You just go Google Scholar and the full text is available. You can download the PDF. No problem whatsoever. Then there is authenticated user. You will need sign-in details. Again, your librarian can give you sign-in details if they have it, or you can get it from your institution, or you can get it from access initiatives. Initiatives like Research for You. Sometimes HEC Digital Library can allow you to access certain full text papers as well. And lastly, you can get author archived copies. Now, there are platforms. Some authors have their own websites. They put their papers on the websites. You can download from there. And then there are digital platforms like ResearchGate, Mendeley, Academia. You can go to those platforms, and from there you can download the author archived copies as well. I would want that, I would request you to make your ResearchGate profile today. That is important. It is basically a logbook of your research. So every time you do a research, you do a proposal, you do a poster presentation, a conference presentation, you add it to ResearchGate. So when you are going for a job interview, your employers these days, they will search you up on ResearchGate. They will look you up. They will see what have you done. And before you present your CV, they would know that this is the amount of publications this person has. And these are the conference presentations, and these are the poster presentations. So please make your profiles on ResearchGate today. Now, dealing with paywalls. A very interesting paper you have located, but unfortunately, there is only the title and abstract available. Full text is not available. Your library does not have access. HEC does not have access, and you don't have the money to pay. What to do now? You can obviously, again, recheck with the librarian, or you could write to the corresponding author. And there is another very interesting thing that is called Unpaywall. Now, Unpaywall is a browser extension. If you go to unpaywall.com, you can download this browser extension, and you don't have to do anything. When you search, a green lock button will appear on the side if the full text is available anywhere on the internet. You click on that green lock button, and it will take you to the full text. So that is the beauty of Unpaywall. Anywhere on the internet, if there is a full text available, it will directly point to that that particular site. So please download Unpaywall to make your life very easy. Now, writing to the author, you don't just go about writing to the author every time you stumble. Every time you fail you face a paywall, you don't write to the corresponding author. You have to ensure that your institution, your university does not have access to that journal. Because these authors, they are very busy people. They're getting so many emails. So if they know that this paper is out there available somewhere and you write to that author, the impression is that this university, this institution, this student, this researcher has not done the desired homework. You don't want to give that bad impression. So if you have made sure that this is not available, then you start writing politely. You introduce yourself. I'm a student of this and this institution doing this program in this particular year, and I'm interested in reading the full text of your paper because I'm planning to do a particular research which is related to what you have done, and what you have done is very interesting. From the abstract, whatever you grasp, you have to give that idea to the author to express your own interest in that particular research. You give the reasons why you don't have access to it. My institution has not subscribed to this database. Then you request a copy that is approved for sharing. Sometimes journals, they do not allow authors to share their copies. So in that case, when you ask for a copy that is approved for sharing, you are actually asking that the author can give you a pre-publication version. That is the galley proof. When a paper is published, just before it is published, there is a proof which is shared with the author. It lacks the branding of the journal. So sometimes the authors will keep a record of that unbranded version of the article, and they can share with you. And that is perfectly fine. That is ethically all right. So this is how you go about writing to the corresponding authors. Then now you will get thousands of journals, hundreds of articles will be interesting to you. You have to sort out which articles, which journals you should read. So you should know which are the important, well-established journals in your field or in general as well. So if something is published in Nature, in Science, in Lancet, in PLOS ONE, in BMJ, you can always say that it is a very reliable piece of work. So you reading it, getting inference from that, getting inspiration from that, that is perfectly fine. So it is always good to browse these journals regularly. You get a cutting edge research ideas from there. And moreover, you get to know what other people are doing and how to write and how to present your research in a way that it can be published in quality journals. You can also sign up for emails of these journals. Sometimes they will give you their content emails. That is also a very good idea to do. And then to establish the credibility of journals, there are websites. If it is listed on Web of Science, it is going to be a good journal. If it has a high impact factor or a high site score, it is bound to be a good journal. Then HEC has a journal recognition system as well. So you can, go to HEC and see the standing of a particular journal. Then there are websites like Think, Check, and Submit, which also give you ideas about the credibility and standing of journals. Okay, so I think we are short on time. So we will perhaps skip this game because you have a fair idea of what kind of questions we are going to ask. I think it is pertinent that we close this on time, and then you can all go back to enjoy your weekends. So Ismail, I think we will be skipping this game time for now and moving on to our next section. Is it all right?
All right, sir. Sure, sir. Welcome.
Right. Thank you. Right. So the last part of the talk today is writing a research paper. Now, writing a research paper, whenever you are writing a research paper, you need to know the structure of the research paper. So today we will talk about the structure, the different components that make up a research paper. So in order to understand what are the different components, we have to section a research paper. We have to dissect it. And when we dissect a research paper, we get these components. We get title, authors, abstract, keywords, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, acknowledgements, references, and sometimes there are appendices as well. So out of these components, the four which are listed in red, as you can see, introduction, methods, results, and discussion, they are considered the body of the paper. So the body of the paper is introduction, methods, results, and discussion. This is sometimes abbreviated as IMRAD, IMRAD or IMRD. So we will talk about primarily these, the body, and we will also briefly talk about the titles, the authors, abstracts, and some other things as well. So firstly, about the title. Now, title is the first thing that a reader reads. When you search on Google Scholar, papers are listed. The first thing you read is the title. So title has to be interesting. Title has to be clear and very specific. An uninteresting, boring title, a vague title, it will tell the reader that there is not much to read in this paper. So maybe they will just skip your paper and not read it. So what are the qualities of an effective title? I have, formatted this in the form of a do's and don'ts kind of thing. So we will see what to do and what not to do when we are writing the research papers. It has less than 15 words. Well, this is not right. There is no limit as such. Some journals may limit the length of the title, but generally speaking, there is no specific limit. But it has to be concise. You cannot have a title that is excessively long. Sometimes if it is long, then you can divide it into two parts. One part followed by a semicolon and then the second part. But it has all got to make sense. So limit of the word is not there, but make sure you follow the instructions that are given by the journal for which you are submitting your paper. Then it clearly conveys the scope of the research reported in paper. Of course, title should reflect what is there in that paper, what research has been done. It includes the key results from the study. Well, this is not always true. Your title does not necessarily need to show the results of that study. Yes, sometimes the discovery is very special and you would want it in the title. Okay, as long as the title is not very long, as long as the title does not become boring, you can add the discovery, you can add the finding, but it is not an absolute requirement. Then written without abbreviations or acronyms if possible. True, you should avoid using abbreviations or acronyms in the titles. And it has a phrase like a study of or observations at the beginning. These are empty phrases. They don't serve much purpose in the title. This is given in the methodology. So you don't need to write these empty phrases in the title. You're just taking up space. You are making the title boring. Then coming to authors. Now, authorship is something which is a very tricky part. It has to be decided when you are starting the research project. Unfortunately, in our local settings, authorship is the thing that you decide when you are writing your research paper, or sometimes even when you are submitting the research paper, people jump in and want to be authors. This is wrong. This is ethically wrong. There are very clear and concise guidelines given by the International Council for Medical Journal Editors. And those guidelines tell you who can be authors. And I have listed these, but I'm skipping this part. You can go to the ICMJE website, International Council for Medical Journal Editors, and it gives you very specific guidelines on authorship. So authors are listed after the title. Authors with their affiliations and sometimes with their academic qualifications, depending upon the requirement of the journal. The next part after the authors is abstract. So this is a scientist who has asked his student to write an abstract, and look what the student has done. He has painted a Picasso, an abstract painting. So abstract has to be a true reflection of the research. If title is the face, then abstract is the first sentence that the person speaks. Sometimes the face is really good looking, but when the person talks, you are immediately disillusioned. So this is exactly how title and abstract work. Abstract is the first impression of your paper. Editors, they read the abstract first. When you submit, journal editors will read the abstract and make a decision whether to proceed with your publication or proceed with your submission for peer review or to reject it right away. So it is important that you focus on writing the abstract in a most appropriate manner. Again, so what are the qualities of an abstract? Do's and don'ts. Contains a maximum of 200 words. This is not right. It can be 200, it can be 250, it can be 300. Your journal in which you are submitting, it will have specific guidelines as to what number of words is allowed for abstract. Please follow the instructions given in the journal. Then abstract presents some information from every section of the body of the research paper. That is true. Abstract has to give an idea about the introduction, about the methods, about the results, and the discussion and conclusion. Abstract presents only an introduction to the study without mentioning the results. This is wrong. Abstract, as I said, it has to have an introductory part, a methods part, a results part, and a discussion and conclusion part. It is formatted as a single paragraph without any headings. Well, this is not true. Nowadays, we have what we call structured abstracts. Structured abstracts have a background or introduction heading. They have a methods heading, they have a results heading, they have a discussion or conclusion heading, very similar to the I'm read headings of the body of the text. So single paragraph, some journals still go with the single paragraph, but most of the journals require a structured abstract. Again, follow the instructions given by the journal. And abstract does not contain citations or references. That is true. You don't need to give citations and references in the abstract section. Then moving on to introduction. Introduction has two purposes. It provides a background to the research work, which will help the reader understand the paper and appreciate the importance of why this current research is being done or has been done. And secondly, the purpose of introduction is that it identifies the research question. Sometimes these research questions are stated as hypothesis, and it is recommended that you should explicitly, I emphasize, you have to very clearly and outrightly state your research questions or hypotheses in the introduction, in the last part of the introduction, because that is your leading point, that is your starting point. So it has to be there in the introduction section. So breaking up the introduction, it is like a funnel. The funnel, which is broader at the top and it narrows down at the bottom. So you start with a broad statement. What is COVID? What is the extent of COVID? That will be the broad statement caused by coronavirus. What is the problem? The problem is that treatment is not available. How you want to address the problem? You want to test antibodies, monoclonal antibodies for the treatment of coronavirus, and then you can state your research question. So starting with the broader base and then moving down and narrowing it down to the research question. That is the structure of introduction. Then methods. Who did that? What was done? When was it done? Where was it done? How was it done? And why was it done? This is methods. Methods are sometimes called materials and methods, patients and methods, subjects and methods, experimental methods. There are different names depending upon the requirement of the journal. But in the end, methods make your research study credible and make it reproducible. Methods should be significantly detailed so that if somebody wants to repeat the experiment, there is enough detail given in the method section for the person to replicate and reproduce your findings. Journal editors and peer reviewers particularly look at the method section for clarity, for completion, and for their ability to be repeated in future work. So if your methods are flawed, if your method section is incomplete, do not expect that you will get your research paper published. Detail, clarity, and precision are essential in the method section. Again, some do's and don'ts about the method section. Details of any equipment, organisms, reagents, etc. used should be included in the method section. That is true. Names of the manufacturers from which equipment or materials were obtained. Yes, they should be included. True. Details of approval of human or animal research by an appropriate committee, like the IRB or the Ethics Research Committee. True. This has to be there in the method section. Then the types of statistical or computational procedures used. Yes, it has to be there. True. Then names of the people who helped with experiments. This is wrong. This is something which goes in the acknowledgement section. People who helped with the experiments, people who helped with some of the tools that you used for your research. You can acknowledge those people in the acknowledgement section, but not to be made part of the method section. Tables with information on experimental or observational conditions. Yes, they can be part of the method section. Tables or figures with data obtained from experiments. No, this is not part of the method section because these will go into the results section, which is the next section. So results are your findings, outcomes of your research. Now let us see what should we be adding in the results and what not to be added. All the data obtained in research should be provided in the results section. Well, this is not true. Not everything goes in the results section. Yes, you have to present your key findings. You can maintain a record of the data because sometimes journal will ask you about all the data. But in the paper, you are writing about the key findings only, the relevant findings, the findings which are giving answers to your research questions. Then both tables and figures are common in the results section in scientific research papers. Yes, that is true. You can have tables for results. You can have figures for results. Figures like pie charts, like bar diagrams, like scatter plots, they are all part of the results section. Unless results are part of a section called results and discussion, only findings should be presented, not their explanations. That is true. Sometimes some journals have results and discussion section combined. So for that, you can give results and then give their explanations as well. But most of the journals, results and discussion are separate sections. So you give the findings and results and their explanations are discussed in the discussion section. Discussion is the explanation of the findings. So which items are appropriate for the discussion section? Do's and don'ts. Explaining the meaning of research findings. True. Clearly answering the research questions or hypotheses that are stated in the introduction. That is true. Acknowledging any limitations of the study and their possible influence on results. True. Sometimes we as authors, we think that, we should hide our limitations. That is not correct. If you hide your limitations, then journal editors or readers, they will easily pick up those limitations when they are reading your research papers. So it is better to be upfront about it. Tell them that our sample size was small. Maybe our experiment was flawed. The research design could have been better. Talk about those things and how they influence the results. And they should all go in the discussion section. Clarification on how the findings of your research relate with the findings from other previous research. Yes, this comparison should be there in the discussion section. Suggesting implications for research study, by practitioners, policymakers, they should also be part of discussion. And similarly, the future research angles that come out from your research, they should also be listed in the discussion section. Discussion is like an inverted funnel. Introduction was a broad base and a narrow tip. Here we are starting from narrow tip, going all the way down to a broader base. So start off with a mini introduction, then restate the main findings, the key findings, and what they mean. Compare with the past research. Tell them that how your research is better than the past research, how your findings are different, what the previous research did not do right, what you did right or otherwise, the pathways between these different research papers. And then you talk about the strengths and limitations of your research. You talk about the applications of your research. And finally, the suggestions for future research projects should also be given in discussion section. And then you can give acknowledgements of people who helped you with your research. And after the acknowledgements, you can also sometimes list the source of funding. And then there is the referencing, the list of references. It is very important. Ethically, referencing is the most important part of doing research. It is the act of acknowledging someone else's ideas, opinions, or work when you are citing them in your own research. So you should always cite the original author, no matter if you have paraphrased, if you have changed the wording, if you have summarized, or you are directly quoting that work, you have to give a reference. You have to cite that work. It is the key element of good practice in academic writing. So I'm telling you that references, there are two parts: in-text citation and reference in the reference list. In-text citation is that during your write-up, you are talking about a certain aspect which has been, which is the idea of another author, which is taken from another publication. You cite it either as a number or author and year, depending upon the format, and then you write it in the reference list. The complete reference is given in the reference list as well. So that is referencing, and it is very important. Manual referencing, some of the students, they start with manual referencing. I do not advise it. It is very painstaking, it is very cumbersome, and it creates problems for the authors. So I suggest that you always start with reference management softwares. One thing is that you cite while you write. CWYW, it means cite while you write. So as you are writing your paper, as you are writing your proposal, you should start citing the references there and then. Do not wait till you have completed the proposal and then add the citations, because that is problematic. I can tell you from my own experience, I started with the traditional way, but now cite while you write, it is the prevalent norm, and you should follow this norm. It saves time. It gives you an idea to go back to the references. It avoids the frustration of thinking that you have picked up this idea from somewhere, but you don't know where. And it also helps you avoid stealing, plagiarism, stealing, or theft. So for cite while you write, you need referencing management softwares. These are softwares in which you can have your references listed as a library. You can organize them. You can use them to input the citations. It will automatically populate the reference list. I use EndNote, but EndNote is a licensed software, but Mendeley and Zotero are also available, and they are free to use. So it is up to you. EndNote, I feel it is very comfortable, and I think there are cracked versions available as well. So you can get hold of a cracked version of EndNote. First thing for research, yes, while you are working on your research project, you're working on your research idea, research question, at the same time, you should have EndNote or any other reference management software installed. And you should also practice it. because that will make your life really very easy. Then you have tables and figures. How you prepare them? You prepare them using Microsoft Word. You can use figure softwares like Canva. You can use statistical softwares like SPSS for generating your figures. And they are part of results section. Sometimes they can also be part of your method section as well. Tables are used to present data in a structured format. Yes, they are used to emphasize data, even with little data. This is not right. If finding can be explained in 1 or 2 sentences, you don't want to make a table for that. You can just write it. No need to make a table. Tables must be numbered and referred to in the text. Yes, and information in every table should be repeated in text. This is wrong. If you have given something in the table, you can always refer to that text with their number, table number, but do not repeat the information. Do not write about that information in the text. That is absolutely wrong. If a table has columns, then the column should have headings. And if you are working with the scientific data, which has units, for example, milligrams per deciliter for hemoglobin or grams per deciliter for hemoglobin, for glucose, things like that, you have to have units in the headings as well. You can give small footnotes underneath the table to explain the information in the table. That is permitted. And there is no need for using phrases like as shown in the table above. You can just say table 1. In the text, just say table 1. And the person reading the table, reading the paper, can always go back to the table to see. As shown in the table above does not make any sense at all. Please avoid these things. Then figures. Figures can be of different types. Flowcharts, photographs, maps. Make sure the quality is good. Make sure the figures are not plagiarized. They are original work. And high resolution images are required by journals these days. So use appropriate softwares for making sure your figures are high quality images. So this is what we have discussed. Just like writing a research paper and the sections that it has, writing a proposal has more or less the same sections. It has abstract, it has a title, it has introduction, it has materials and methods. But it does not have results and discussion. Instead of results and discussion, it has a section called outcome and utilization. What will be the outcome of this research? What could be the potential applications of this research proposal? That you can write in outcomes and utilization. Then you can give the timeline for research, you can give the budget, and references are also part of the research proposal. So if you know how to write a paper, you can write a proposal. Or you start with a good proposal, it will make writing a research paper that much more easier for you. Okay, so take home messages, the last bit. I have given you a lot of information. I am aware that you will not be able to retain a lot of it. So the take home messages will be that right now you would be feeling clueless. You will feel that, you still don't have a starting point. You will never be able to find out a starting point. You just have to begin. Think big, start small, act fast. I would say act now. If you want to do research, today is the day you are starting. You're starting with small baby steps, but your ultimate goal is to publish a good quality paper. And I can assure you, if you start, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step in the right direction. So I have given you the direction, and now it is up to you to take that first step in the right direction. For that, you will need your master Shifu. You will need your mentor. You may be a very lazy Po when it comes to research at this point, but if you have your mentor, master Shifu, you can become the dragon warrior, and you can become a very proficient researcher with the help of your own effort and with the guidance of your mentor. And then it is a teamwork. You need to develop a team. Everybody contributes, and finally you get a good product. And lastly, just do it. There is no other way about it. You have to do it. You have to start with your work now. Right. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure talking to you today. And thank you to our coordinators, Ismail and Mir and their team for arranging such a wonderful platform. Thank you to EduLife as well for hosting this. And if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer those.
My question is that कि हम जब डेटा कलेक्शन करते हैं तो मोस्टली हम गूगल फॉर्म यूज करते हैं तो गूगल फॉर्म में मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल जो है ना वो करेक्ट आंसर नहीं करते तो फिर हम कैसे हाउ वी कम टू नो कि ये एग्जैक्ट डेटा आया या नहीं आया
Okay, so and this is a very interesting question and I think this is also my observation. मैंने भी ये नोट किया है कि गूगल फॉर्म के ऊपर जब हम डेटा कलेक्शन कर रहे होते हैं तो वहाँ पे लोग बड़ा रैंडमली क्वेश्चंस को आंसर कर देते हैं तो उसका जो एक वे आउट है आई थिंक वो ये है कि आप इन पर्सन आप 1-to-1 क्वेश्चनर्स फिल करवाएं पेपर क्वेश्चनर्स करवाएं या अपनी एक टैब के ऊपर आप अपना गूगल फॉर्म रख लें एंड यू गो टॉक टू द पार्टिसिपेंट्स पर्सनली उसमें यह है कि वो जो एक ह्यूमन टच है जो एक कोऑर्डिनेशन डेवलप होती है जो एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग उस रिसर्च के बारे में आप इस तरह से कर सकते हैं तो वो द पर्सन इज लाइकली टू गिव यू मोर अप्रोप्रिएट मोर क्लोज टू द ट्रूथ आंसर्स देन व्हेन दे आर जस्ट रैंडमली आस्क्ड टू फिल अ गूगल फॉर्म तो आप इसमें 1-to-1 यानी रिसर्चर एडमिनिस्ट्रेड क्वेश्चनर्स होने चाहिए आइदर पेपर फॉर्म और ऑन गूगल फॉर्म बट यू कैन यूज अ टैबलेट एंड गो टू द पार्टिसिपेंट्स इसका एक तो ये वे आउट है इस मेरे ख्याल में तो इसी तरह करना चाहिए क्योंकि जब मैं बाहर भी रिसर्च मैंने भी कुछ क्वेश्चनर बेस्ड स्टडीज की थी तो इनिशियली वी वेंट फॉर दीज गूगल फॉर्म्स बट देन हमने रियलाइज किया कि हमें वी वर नॉट गेटिंग द राइट आंसर्स तो फिर हमने पर्सन टू पर्सन जाके वो रिसर्च डेटा कलेक्शन की
Assalamu alaikum.
वालेकुम सलाम
Thank you so much, sir, for this informative session. I just wanted to ask about any tips for improving the statistical skills, because this is the part where we lack the most. Thank you so much.
Okay, right. So I deliberately did not touch upon statistics today because this was a very introductory, very, a preamble kind of session. But for statistics, I think, again, going back to the basics, literature, search, reading, it is very important. When you read research papers, you come to see what other people are doing in terms of their statistical analysis. Yes, we understand that, being from a medical background or health background, our statistical, ability is not as good as perhaps somebody who is into biostatistics. So we can always get statistical advice for people who are experienced in this field. But yes, when you are starting your research project, you have to have a fair idea and you can practice these statistical softwares. There are so many guides available on YouTube these days. If you are stuck somewhere, there is a lot of information on YouTube. Do not be afraid of trying things. Sometimes we are afraid. We think that, statistics is not our domain. So we should not go into that. But if you try, if you start to learn, I can assure you that you will learn anything and everything that you feel you're not comfortable with.
I wanted to ask if you're doing a research on a certain topic that is related, it is covering a very large domain, or jisme hum, do we have to consider outside of Pakistan? You have to go through the research papers of outside Pakistan, या सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में रहते हुए ही you have to, go through, और सिर्फ यहीं के literature को हम पढ़े? For starters.
No, this is a very good question. Right. So I think when you are doing research, there are no boundaries. There is no Pakistan, there is no US. It is research. Going back to the definition of research, it is a systematic approach to generating new and reliable knowledge. And knowledge has no boundaries. So when you are doing a literature search, do not limit yourself to studies from Pakistan only. Do not limit yourself to regional boundaries. You have to cite references from everywhere. You have to read papers from everywhere. Only then you will be able to come to a research question that will generate new and reliable knowledge. Otherwise, if you're limiting yourself, then the knowledge may not be new. And it may not even be reliable because you have not consulted research which has been conducted elsewhere in the world. So it is important to search anything and everything that has been published in a particular domain. One tip that I give to my students is that when you are searching on a particular topic, you keep searching till the time you start seeing that information being repeated over and over again. That's the time where you stop, because now you know that you have searched enough. You have searched almost everything because things are repeating. So that is a small tip that I think everyone should follow when they are doing literature search.
That was very helpful. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.